News!
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest from former Undisputed Champion Chantel ahead of what could be a Katie Taylor trilogy. She says on her social media, a lot of rumors happening, so here's some facts. Some journalists have told me of some informed sources contacting them, so to avoid any doubt, I'll give the facts direct from me. I was offered the trilogy at a vastly reduced purse. I refused, as this figure was extremely low. I gave a reasonable figure that got refused. I then lowered it to make the fight happen. As of this morning, Matchroom and DAZN want to do the trilogy, so there is only one party holding it all up. Katie Taylor and her team are holding up one of the biggest fights in women's boxing history, even though the video shows different. The first fight, I was called up by Katie Taylor and agreed to terms within 48 hours. Let's make this as simple as we did then. I am ready to sign the deal now. Look, I like Chantel Cameron, but I think she's struggling with being the B-side. I noticed that when some fighters have to deal with Katie Taylor, they don't like that she's the one that calls the shots, that she's the one that's in control, and that things happen on her time, not theirs.
They don't like that, but that's the way it is.
With any A-side fighter, whether you're talking about Floyd Mayweather, Canelo Alvarez, in this instance, Katie Taylor, that's the way it is. To say that Katie Taylor is holding up one of the biggest fights in women's boxing, Katie Taylor is the reason there even are big fights in the sport of women's boxing, and she's already delivered us a few.
Quite a few.
The two Persoon fights, the Amanda Serrano fights, your two fights with her.
I think that warrants some consideration.
I noticed Rick Ramos's comments in the comment section under this post saying Katie always went the safer path.
The fuck?
So when she voluntarily gave Jessica McCaskill a title shot that she didn't have to give her.
Was that the safer path?
Because Jessica wasn't her mandatory challenger. She had no profile at the time. No one knew of her except maybe me.
Was that the safer path?
She could have fought anybody, almost anybody, in that situation, and they would have brought as much to the table as Jessica brought to the table at that time. But you're saying she always takes the safer path. You know, she chose. She chose to go after the undisputed crown at 135. She chose to fight all those champions. That's a choice. That's not something that she had to do. That's what she wanted to do.
And no, not everybody makes that same choice.
Anaí Esther Sanchez for the WBA title, Rose Vellante for the WBO, Delphine Persoon for the WBC.
She fought it 2 times. 2 times. There are girls, you can't get them to fight Delphine once. She fought it twice.
Victoria Bustos for the IBF. Christina Linardatu for the WBO up there at 140. That's the same Christina Linardatu that beat Alicia Baumgartner. Katie chose to go up there. Katie chose to fight her.
But according to Rick, she always goes the safer route.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. You don't get a resume like Katie's by going the safer path.
I don't think very many people are going to agree with Rick.
Amanda Serrano. She pursued that fight for years, and once again, she didn't have to. She didn't have to focus on Amanda.
She was already making very good money without fighting Amanda Serrano. She only fought Amanda because she wanted to fight Amanda.
She only fought Chantel because she wanted to fight Chantel. She didn't have to. She didn't have to go back up there. She didn't have to fight her at 140. She never had to do that. She chose to do that, and she chose to fight her again.
She could have left it where it was. Leave 140 with her tail between her legs because she still had her belts at 135. She chose to go back. She chose to fight her again. So to pretend.
They even pretend that Katie Taylor, at any moment, has been on the path of least resistance, is disingenuous, comes off as bitter.
Salty.
You're telling me she fought all these fucking people, all these champions across 2 divisions, because she's on the path of least resistance?
Bullshit.
Yeah, that's fucking bullshit. That's what most people are going to call that. They're going to call that bullshit. I don't know what the holdup is exactly, but I know that Katie Taylor has done enough that she's the one in control. She can take her time. If she wants a 3rd fight, there'll be a 3rd fight. And if she doesn't, then she doesn't.
But the only reason there were already 2 is because of her.
And that's what neither Chantel Cameron or Rick Ramos are saying. We're only here because of Katie Taylor.
For how many years did you see Chantel Cameron say that she thought that fight would never happen, that Katie would never take it?
Just for Katie Taylor to end up fighting her not once, but twice. Yeah, I think she deserves a little bit more respect.
That's all I'm saying.
In men's featherweight news, A last look at the upcoming Ray Vargas versus Nick Ball WBC title fight set to go down tomorrow on the undercard of Joshua versus Ngannou. My final thoughts. Just a refresher for those who haven't heard them already.
If Ray Vargas would have been more active the last 2 years, if he would have fought more, then I'd go with Ray, because he is the more obviously experienced fighter of the two, and he's fought a lot of good fighters before. This won't be the first time he's opposite the ring an aggressive, come-forward volume puncher.
No, he faced one years ago in what was crazy A, Afsat Havanesian, back when Ray Vargas was an HBO fighter. And a lot has happened since then. Rather, a lot hasn't for Ray Vargas.
He's 33 years old. The Nick Ball, who's 27. Nick is younger. Nick is smaller.
Noticeably smaller, shorter, stumpier fighter of the two, whereas Ray Vargas, he's unusually tall. He's unusually tall for a featherweight.
He was always big at these weights.
Super bantamweight, featherweight, best described as more boxer than brawler, more cerebral. Mexican fighters are often thought of as all being come-forward pressure fighters, come-forward volume punchers, but that's not Ray. Ray likes to keep distance, create space, use it. He has to because he's so tall and so long for these weights. He needs that room to work.
He needs room to punch. I don't think Nick is going to give it to him.
I think Nick Ball is catching Ray Vargas at the most opportune time to catch Ray Vargas, when he hasn't made this weight in close to 2 years, and he hasn't fought in a year.
The Oshaki Foster fight, that was a year ago.
His longtime trainer, Nacho Beristain, a legend of Mexican boxing, he's not with him anymore. He's not in his corner. He wasn't in his corner for the Oshaki Foster fight, and he doesn't appear to be in his corner for this one.
Not the same fighter.
Sporting a professional record of 36 wins with just one loss, no draws, 22 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 37 professional bouts. The Nick Ball, who sports an unblemished record of 19 wins with no losses, no draws,
11 knockouts.
Timing is key. Timing is everything, and timing is the reason I'm going with Nick Ball to win, because I believe he's catching Ray Vargas at the right time. It's not that Ray hasn't seen this base style before.
He has.
It's that now's not the best time for him to deal with it. Again, dealing with a rough and rugged, come-forward pressure guy who's going to barrel forward, rough you up, try to crowd the pocket.
It's not a good time.
You need your wits about you, your speed, your reflexes, your timing. And after this much inactivity, I don't think Ray's is there.
Nope.
I remember in the Mixayo fight a year ago, Mark Mixayo was getting in every so often. He was getting in with some hard shots, some really hard shots, and Mark isn't as prolific a puncher as Nick Ball.
He's limited.
Limited to the straight 1-2. In terms of combinations, Nick is a better combination puncher to me than Mark Mixayo.
I like his combinations in the pocket, the shortness, the tightness of his punches.
Tight hooks. Fighter like Nick Ball, pressure fighter, what you see is what you get. You have a good idea of what he's going to do, try to do, and I don't think Ray Vargas will be able to keep him out.
His timing's going to be off because he hasn't fought in a while.
Question is physical condition, having not made this weight. This particular weight in close to 2 years is getting down to 126. Did that take something out of him?
Because it could have.
Ray is so much taller and so much longer than Nick. He punches wider. He has no choice.
It's his physical dimensions. He needs a lot more room to work than Nick Ball does, and I don't think Nick Ball is going to give him that. I think that Nick Ball, he's going to rush him.
Nick Ball will be the more prolific puncher in the round and the busier fighter in the fight.
Younger and fresher.
And more ambitious. For what it's worth, I think if Ray can get in with something good, he could hurt Nick Ball. Of course he could.
I just don't trust him.
This style, under these circumstances, I don't trust him. And I happen to think, for the betterment of this division, this weight class, it would be better if the WBC title changes hands.
I don't know if Ray Vargas is still with the PBC, but if he is, then it would be better for this division if that title goes to Nick than being held hostage by Ray.
Is Ray gonna fight Raymond Ford? Is Ray gonna fight Rafael Espinoza? Is Ray gonna fight Luis Lopez?
I don't think so.
If Nick Ball takes care of business tomorrow, we might see him again very soon on the undercard of Better Beef versus Bivol for what is the Matchroom versus Queensbury show.
I think he's going to.
I think he's gonna win tomorrow. I think Nick Ball will outwork Ray Vargas tomorrow to become the newly crowned WBC featherweight champion. Already talked about the junior middleweight contest between Magomed Kurbanov and Israel Madrimov. I have Israel winning that fight. I have Israel becoming WBA champion in the co-main event to the main event, we have Zhang
Big Bang Zhang
versus the former heavyweight champion, former WBO champion, Joseph Parker, who's noticeably younger, noticeably lighter.
Zhang came in at close to 300 pounds, 44 pounds heavier than Joseph Parker.
That could mean two things. It's either Zhang is going to be too big and too durable for Joseph, or Joseph is going to be noticeably faster, too fast for Zhang.
That all that weight is going to make Zhang more stationary.
And make it harder to catch Joseph Parker, catch him with a shot. This is not Joe Joyce. This is not Filip Hrgovic. What separates those fighters from Joseph Parker is those are much bigger men, bigger targets.
Slower, too.
You say that, well, Joe Joyce, didn't he stop Joseph Parker? And didn't Zhang stop him?
Yeah, he did, but triangle theories don't work. Just because Zhang beat Joe doesn't mean he's going to beat Joseph.
No, not necessarily. Not just because one beat the other and he beat him.
It's a triangle theory.
The difference between boxing Joe Joyce and boxing Joseph Parker is Joe Joyce is a very big man, very big target, slow, cumbersome heavyweight that stands right in front of you, throwing punches and bunches, barreling forward, whereas Joseph is a smaller target, lighter on his feet.
Trickier.
I think he's going to bend at the waist, bend at the knees, keep those hands high as he's coming forward, slipping Zhang's straight punches and coming around the side with looping shots, with overhand shots.
The overhand right.
Overhand around the side or the right down the pipe, down the middle. Zhang, he's a southpaw.
Joe's an orthodox fighter.
Because of the angle of attack, a southpaw is slightly more susceptible to a right hand than an orthodox fighter. So if Zhang is getting out his jab and Joseph Parker slips it, he can shoot a right hand down the pipe or a right hand around the side, an overhand right. Catch him clean and catch him hard.
Joe is younger.
But he's also more experienced, the more experienced professional of the two. Don't forget that he is a former champion. He's been in there with Anthony Joshua and Dillian White, Andy Ruiz, Derek Chisora,
Carlos Takam.
more recently, Deontay Wilder in what was the biggest, if not one of the biggest, upsets of last year. He could upset the apple cart for Zhang on the premise that Zhang is a strong guy and a talented counterpuncher, but it may be harder to counter Joseph because he's a smaller guy, smaller target. He's not standing right in front of you in all the ways that Joe Joyce was.
And when he is, he's harder to hit because he's smaller.
That's what flustered Deontay Wilder when he fought Joseph Parker. The taller, longer fighter needs more room to work.
Joseph won't.
Fighting within close quarters has to be the strategy for Joseph Parker. A similar strategy to the one we saw late last year. He has to try to get in and get in safely. If he can rough up Zhang, who's a great fighter, but he's pushing 40.
Getting long in the tooth.
And as the fight progresses, that favors Joseph Parker. We've seen Zhang fade down the stretch. We've seen him tire out. This is going into the 8th or the 9th or the 10th round. I don't know what, if anything, Zhang is going to have in the tank. So it's either Zhang gets him early or Joseph wins on points.
You don't think Joseph can knock him out?
It's the heavyweight division, so you can never completely rule out a knockout. But I don't know that Joe has that kind of firepower, and Zhang's a big guy. I think it's likelier than not that Joseph would outwork him, get in with more punches, and be busier than him stopping him.
I've got Parker on points.
I wouldn't be surprised if Zhang wins.
I've got Parker on points.
Wouldn't be surprised if Zhang knocks him out.
I've got Parker on points.
But I'm going with Joseph to win a decision. I'm going with Joseph Parker on points on the premise that this is not a slow, cumbersome heavyweight that's going to stand right in front of you.
Might be harder to hit this guy with those counters because he's younger, he's fresher, lighter on his feet, and he's a smaller target.
With a good corner. He looks rejuvenated with Andy Lee in his corner.
Parker on points is the pick.
Francis Ngannou, what a crowd over here. It seems like Cameroon is in the house. Can I ask you, Francis, the mindset going into Tyson versus the mindset going into AJ? What's the difference between this Francis and the one that we saw back in October?
It's basically the same mindset. You know, I'm just, obviously I have learned a little bit from the last fight, from the last camp, leading up to this one. So I get a little bit of experience, but the mindset is still the same. You know, this is just my second boxing match. Even though I'm taking the two best guy in the world in the boxing, but it's still my second boxing match. So my mindset is still the same. I'm an underdog. I'm going out there to prove, you know, that you can be an underdog and make it, you know, and then stand my ground.
I love when you face off with him. There's always a bit of a smirk, almost like you know something that everyone else doesn't know. There's a little smile on your face. What do you know about this fight on Friday that everyone else doesn't seem to know?
No, I think sometimes it just make me laugh a little bit because I know that, okay, we are going to fight in boxing rules, but what happened if he was just a free fight on MMA rules? I would smoke those guys.
I love it. Your official prediction, Francis, what is it?
And I'm the only one to go in the backyard. None of them can come to my backyard. I'll take two of them at once.
Sounds good, but the real reason you don't see more boxers going into mixed martial arts is because it pays less. If you stood to make in mixed martial arts what Francis is about to make in a boxing ring, then you would see more boxers crossing over because the money's the incentive. It's all prize fighting, after all, and the size of the prize in a boxing ring is bigger than the size of the prize in the octagon. That's the only reason Francis is coming over.
Yeah.
It's not for glory. It's not for any of those things. It's because boxing pays better.
Yeah.
And in his own words, he made the most money he ever made in that one Tyson Fury fight.
Than any fight he had in a cage.
So let's just call a spade here. If we're going to be honest with each other, completely honest with each other, boxing is a much, much bigger sport than mixed martial arts.
If it's not, then why is he getting paid so much more to box than what he was making as a champion in the UFC?
If mixed martial arts has overtaken boxing as the premier combat sport, then why does boxing generate more money?
Because it's bigger.
Well, why is it bigger?
Because it's older, more people watch it.
Anthony Joshua is already on the Forbes list, you understand. Francis Ngannou is not. Anthony's already there, having not boxed in a crossover fight, having not boxed an MMA fighter that's crossing over. He doesn't actually need this circus to be one of the highest paid athletes in combat sports. That's all. Without the circus, without the production.
So when you see these guys crossing over, saying what they're saying, don't let that fool you. The only reason you're doing it is because the prizes in boxing are bigger than the prizes in mixed martial arts.
That's it. It's prize fighting, not pride fighting. And the prizes are the only reason you're doing it.
We were in a street fight.
Listen, sweetheart, in a street fight could end just as easily from a knife in the gut or a lead pipe across the head than a kick to the head or a right cross to the mouth.
It's a street fight. There ain't no referee. There ain't no cage. There ain't no rules.
So MMA fighters make themselves feel better for not being able to make it as boxers, because if you could make it as a boxer, then you would. It pays better.
Francis has done very well for himself. I'm not saying that he hasn't.
But you were fast-tracked to a Tyson Fury. To make it as a boxer, it's different. You would have had to climb up those ranks and go through that process, and you might have got beat along the way.
I think he's going to get beat tomorrow.
Think Anthony's going to break him down with the jab round after round and take him out and say maybe 8 or 9?
But it's an unusual situation because you're being fast-tracked to all of the money fights, and that's not really how things work in the sport of boxing if you're going to make it in the sport of boxing.
I heard he's going back to mixed martial arts after this anyway, so it's all much ado about nothing. I've got Anthony Joshua winning, but you knew that already.
Francis ain't got the element of surprise anymore.
Anthony's going to beat him, and we're going to move on. It's as simple as that.